For some reason, there's this widespread, great big misunderstanding about the difference between APS-C sensor cameras and full-frame cameras when it comes to bokeh. I see this repeated over and over on YouTube videos and in forums all over the place when people are asking about what kind of camera they should buy, that you can get a more blurry background, that you get more bokeh with the full-frame camera than you do with the crop body. That is strictly untrue and a misunderstanding, and I'm gonna prove it with science. Well, with examples, with carefully measured photographic proofs. Then I'm gonna go over the misunderstanding and the realities between the cheaper APS-C cameras versus a full-frame camera on the subject of the background. And a few unexpected things about background blur as it relates to focal length and aperture that weren't entirely intuitive before I took these few dozen photos during the setup for this video. I happen to have a crop-bodied ZV-E10 and a full-frame A7 IV right here to make my case. And the setup for this is super easy. I've got this Bitcoin miner right here as our subject. That's what these things look like if you've never seen one before. Not interesting. And then back here behind me, I've got this little power supply hanging on this cage at the same height as the subject and the same height as the camera lens. Actually, I gotta turn off these little colorful lights. That green dot is our bokeh example. My argument is that if the full frame camera and the crop sensor camera are in the same physical spot, the same distance from the subject, and the subject is the same distance from the background. In other words, if nothing has moved between shooting a picture with this camera and shooting the same picture with this camera, the degree to which the background is blurred in both shots will be identical. The full frame camera will not produce any more blurriness of the background than the APS-C camera. What it will do is show more of the room off the sides of the picture. That doesn't matter. We'll just crop that out, hence crop body. Spoiler alert. I'll explain all that after the demonstration. To make sure I'm getting the exact same shot with both bodies, normally that's hard to do. These camera bodies are different sizes, the sensors are at different heights on the body, the mounting plates are in slightly different spots on the bottom. So to make this perfectly identical, I have this very nice 70-200 G Master lens from Sony. It's got its own mounting plate on a tripod, shot right down the lane, looking at that little piece of bokeh. Science. Then I'll just mount one body at a time onto the same lens with this handy dandy recorder on there so you can see what's happening through the camera. The orientation of the photo should be precisely the same. We're at 200 millimeters, f2.8, at a 10-second timer so that there's no shake in the camera. Everything should just be perfect. Now, without shaking or moving anything, take this camera off. Still f2.8, focusing in the same spot. This camera is 24 megapixels and the A7 IV is 33 megapixels, so the photos won't be the same actual size, but both of these will be a higher resolution than the screen you're watching this on, so that won't matter. All we're looking at is the chubbiness of the little ball of light in the background anyway. We're gonna frame these up so that they're the same. So if I crop this, so that grill thing in the right side of the E of space, then the top of the miner, and then we'll just put this in a third. That's the ZV-E10. This is the A7 IV, and that same thing. We're gonna go that one grill to the right of space, top of the miner, and we put that in a third. ZV-E10, A7 IV. Crop body censored camera, full frame sensor camera. You can look at the data up on the top there, both at f2.8, both at 1/50th of a second, both at 200 millimeters. The bokeh is the same. Look at the bokeh. You don't get more bokeh out of a full frame camera. The bokeh has to do with the lens and the relationship between the distance from the camera to the subject and the subject to the background. I can explain why this is true and make it make sense. So this is a full frame sensor. Light comes through the lens and gets shot onto the sensor, which senses it and saves that moment in time for you. This is an APS-C sensor. It's physically smaller, but the lens is the same. It's doing the same thing and it's coming into the camera in the same way. It's just since this sensor is smaller, it's just catching this much of the inside of the picture that comes through the lens. What you end up with a crop sensor camera is just this zoomed in portion of the exact same photo that the full frame camera took, including the bokeh. It's the same size subject in the relation to the things behind it, and the same bokeh. Here's where people go wrong in saying that crop body cameras make less background blur. Because since this picture is zoomed in, if what you're shooting instead of a metal box is a person, well then since this is zoomed in, you'll back up to shoot them or choose a wider lens. And wider lenses do produce less background blur. So does backing up. But it's the lens that's making the less bokeh, not the sensor. The sensor is just what leads you to choosing which lens. Next demonstration. If the lens stays in the same position, the aperture stays the same, and the sensor stays the same, all that we're gonna change is the focal length. A more telephoto focal length will make more bokeh, and more bokeh than I thought. Let me set that up. Okay, I'm gonna shoot 3 shots. 135. One at 200. I don't know why this surprised me. I guess I thought that as long as the aperture was the same and the camera was in the same spot, that the bokeh would be the same. It's real zoomed in, so it's a little sparkly. Do the other two, 200 millimeters. I'm not sure why the bokeh turned into a lemon, but super clearly, if the picture is framed the same at a longer focal length, this is 200, this is 132, and this is 70, the background blur is way more at a longer focal length with the camera in the same place, the subject in the same place, the background at the same distance from the subject. So you can use that information to build your own background when you're shooting yourself. It's also true that if you move the camera closer to the subject without changing the distance between the subject and the background, you'll get more bokeh, you'll get more background blur that way too. I'm gonna scoot the camera that's filming me closer to me, reframe it, you should see a pretty big difference in the background. So without changing anything else, without changing the aperture, without changing the focal length, just bringing the camera closer to me and having the background stay equally far behind me as it was before, you can see now that the background is much blurrier than before. So that's taking this same example of the previous shots and applying them to something other than a shiny box and a little green light in the background. And you can see why learning all of these relationships is so important. And you can do that in this next video that should be right here. I've just released it at the same time. It's about what focal length to shoot at and why you would choose one over the other. Here's a little teaser. I've got this camera at 50 millimeters and then this camera at 200 millimeters all the way across the warehouse, both shooting me at the same time. Notice the difference in the background. Notice the difference in the framing, even though all the stuff in the foreground is reasonably similar looking. Look at the tool chest. Subscribe to the channel. Goodbye.